Hello? I hear you very well. Thank you.
All right, y'all, coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered for December 13th, 2018, a man from Delaware who was wrongly convicted of rape, spent 39 years in prison. Folks, he got out today. Wait until you see his first steps being free. We have the video. We also the first pictures of Jasmine Headley being reunited with her one-year-old son. She's the woman who was sitting on a floor at a food stamps office, and when the security guards came and called the cops and snatched the baby out of her arms. Now the commissioner, he is now asserting, the NYPD commissioner is asserting that his officers were trying to de-escalate the situation. Really? More and more people are putting pressure on Tennessee Governor Bill Haslam to grant clemency to Cyntoia Brown, a 16-year-old, first of all, the woman who's now 30, but when she was 16 years old, when she was sex trafficked, and then she killed a man who picked her up from a burger joint. We'll show you how you can get involved. Also, the 3 women of color behind the January 2017 Women's March are getting attacked for alleged anti-Semitic remarks and attitudes in their support of Louis Farrakhan. They are now fighting back. We'll show you a video that they dropped on Instagram last night. Also, the Republicans continue their assault on democracy, this time in Florida. Well, the incoming governor, Ron DeSantis, he wants to delay Amendment 4, which granted voting rights to the formerly incarcerated. Wait, I tell you exactly what he's trying to say. Also, a man is shot to death in a Walgreens in Los Angeles earlier this month. His lawyer is here to tell us that he was profiled for being black, gay, and homeless. Attorney Carl Douglas will join us. And also, a woman wins $1 million for a chicken recipe. Y'all remember this? She was on Oprah's show a long time ago. Well, social media went and dug up that clip of Oprah. Not really so excited about how that meal tasted. Well, guess what? Oprah is actually responding herself to them digging that video up. We'll show the response. Folks, it's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the biz, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. It down from sports news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funky, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
Last night, an exclusive right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered, the attorney for Elmer Daniels, a man who spent 39 years in prison in Delaware, broke us the story that a judge signed the paperwork for the charges to be dropped against him, and that he was getting out of prison today. Well, here is the video of Elmer Daniels, his first steps of freedom.
All right. Good job. Excuse us. Good job, man.
Congratulations. Free man.
And of course, we wanted Elmer Daniels on the show today, but he is right now at home celebrating with his mother and 14 brothers and sisters. As we said, he spent 39 years in prison, and he was convicted. The judge was white, the jury was white, his attorney was white, prosecutors were white. But there were issues with one of the expert witnesses, and it was his attorneys who were able to get the right information presented to the judge, and those charges were indeed dropped. And so he walked out of prison today after 39 years. And he previously was granted an option to plead to a lower to a lower charge and to have his time reduced. He said, "Look, I did not commit this rape." And as a result, he, of course, released from prison. And so we hope to have him on soon. And so to Elmer Daniels, I'm sure it's one hell of a party at the Daniels home as their son, their brother, is now home after 39 years in prison, convicted when he was 18 years old. And let's go to the story coming out of New York, of course. You remember, of course, the video of Jasmine Headley. She was the black woman who was in a food stamps office. And there were no seats. She sat on the floor with her child. Then the security called NYPD. Now, the cops union in New York claims the officers were trying to step in to stop a dispute between the mom and the peace officers assigned by the New York Human Resources Administration to provide security at that office. I can't actually tell that was happening. The NYPD commissioner has also said that he has seen body cam video, and they were actually trying that. Folks, if you actually look at this video, it's not hard to figure out. I mean, they literally are I don't see anywhere in this video where the officers are trying to stop the resource officers. I don't see where anybody is saying, "Hey, everybody back up, be quiet, leave her be, let's sort it out." No, what I see very clearly, them pulling on her, trying to remove the baby from her arms. Now, remember, it was Headley who was then arrested and sent to Rikers Island. She was there for several days before she was released from the notorious New York City jail. A judge dropped all charges, but there was an outstanding warrant in New Jersey, so they kept her in Rikers Island until Tuesday night. New Jersey authorities dropped that warrant, so she got out and was reunited with her baby. Damone, folks, we should have the video of her. So this was, of course, a photo, her being reunited, of course, with her child there. And so, again, talk about unbelievable. But again, you hear these cops talking about de-escalating the situation, but did you actually see that? Joining us right now is DeLacy Davis, Black Cops Against Police Brutality. DeLacy, when you hear the commissioner saying, "Oh no, my officers are trying to de-escalate," I'm sorry, I'm watching the video trying to see where was the de-escalation.
Well, you're right, Roland. What happens is incredulous that the commissioner would make such a statement, and that is part and parcel of the problem, as you and I have talked about this in the past, and that is that law enforcement is tone deaf, and law enforcement has a mindset that says, because we're the police, what we tell you, you should believe, and don't believe your lying eyes. And that started with Rodney King, and it has continued. In de-escalation, what you may have seen was someone sitting on the floor with Miss Headley and talking to her in a very calm and respectful voice while she sat there on the floor with her baby. That was not de-escalation. That was law enforcement escalating their behavior.
And obviously you have the police, and they're trying to say, you know what, trying to protect their own. But here's the issue. I've seen countless videos, and I'm telling you right now, rarely have I seen a video where an officer involving somebody black is de-escalating a situation.
Yeah, we haven't seen a lot of video around it, and I imagine that it happens some places, but it's not happening as frequently as we see the aggression and the escalation. And I believe, there was an ACLU report some 10 years ago that talked about police violence and use of force. And it said the attitude of the police officer on the street was a reflection of the leadership at the top. And this is what we see. When the commissioner gives you a pass and says they were de-escalating, and the police union says they were de-escalating, Yet the Brooklyn District Attorney, who is the highest law enforcement officer in that area, Eric Gonzalez, says that it was horrific, the violence that he saw. The judge, Craig Walker from Brooklyn, says it was a horrific arrest. And New Jersey courts, even I think from a sympathetic point of view, they actually dismissed the warrant, gave her a fine and community service. So everyone who's supposed to be in this continuum in terms of law enforcement, some people are synthesized to it, while law enforcement is saying and taking a hard line as though there's a need to be tough on crime with a 23-year-old holding a baby sitting on the floor. They just don't get it, and it's coming through in what they're saying.
And so if you are, when it comes to this woman here, what should she do next? Do you believe that she'll be suing this police department? And what should Mayor Bill de Blasio be saying to his police commissioner?
Well, I think that he should be saying to his police commissioner that we have to change that narrative. That's just not acceptable. It's not service. It is not the CPR that we saw in some of the vehicles in NYPD. It's not courteous. It's not professional, and it's not respectful. So it goes against even their mantra about what they articulate they believe. I think if I were the mayor, I'd say to him, you've got to tell the truth about what you're looking at. That is not de-escalation. You're actually endangering the child because she's holding on to the child as any mother would, and you have officers attempting to rip the child out of her arms. So if anyone's endangering the welfare of the child, it is the officers, and then there's an officer that pulled out a taser. So what do you think happens when you shoot a taser with 50,000 volts of electricity into the mother holding the baby? What do you think? And what happens if you miss the mother and hit the baby? So it's just it's a failure on every level, from a community policing failure, from a community relations failure, to a policing failure. The social reality is that she was not a threat to anyone sitting on the floor. And if you believe that there was a problem, then there was a need to sit, talk with her, and try to talk her into a chair, even bring a chair over to her. I'd be curious to know, was the place crowded? Was it overcrowded? Was there no place to sit? Was she just frustrated with being there in terms of service delivery? And again, that is not providing service to her as a client in the public. All
right, Delisa Davis, we appreciate it. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Roland.
All right, and folks, for the people who are watching us on Periscope shortly, the show will be going away on Periscope. You need to go watch the rest of our show on YouTube. So go to youtube.com/Roland S. Martin, youtube.com/Roland S. Martin for the folks who are watching on Periscope. Now let's talk about Cyntoia Brown. Of course, the woman who was 30 years old, yet it was 14 years ago when she was sold into sex slavery, killed her captor. She is now being forced to serve 51 years in prison for being eligible for parole. Tennessee Governor Bill Haslam leaves office in early January. Pressures mounting on him to provide clemency and release her from prison. Now, folks like Kerry Washington, Cornell Brooks, former head of the NAACP, Common, Meek Mill, and Congresswoman-elect Ayanna Pressley, all voicing their support on social media for Cyntoia Brown, also Viola Davis. Now, MoveOn.org has a handy script for people to use when calling Governor Bill Haslam of Tennessee. They have the number, which is 615-741-2001. Here's some key parts of that particular script. Be polite and calm. While we might be angry, we need to send a consistent message that can't be twisted to discredit us. Cyntoia Brown has been in prison since she was 16 years old, and no young person should be punished for being a victim of abuse and trauma. Governor Bill Haslam cannot wait any longer. Cyntoia's freedom matters. The governor's leadership is important, and Cyntoia is counting on him to do the right thing now. Will the governor support the immediate release of Cyntoia Brown? Again, the number to call is 615-741-2001. I want to go to our panel right now. Joining me, of course, is Alan Bolden.
It's A. Scott, ladies and gentlemen.
First of all, he goes by A. Scott Bolden. I ran at one of it was a guy who played with him. He said, who does Scott think he is? Going by A. Scott Bolden. He said we were in college. His name was Alan Bolden, but now all of a sudden he becomes a law partner. Now it's A. Scott Bolden.
And you've got to honor and respect that.
And if he was an old black preacher, it'd be A.S. Bolden.
That's right. That's right.
But
standing for A.S.
So joining us on the show is attorney Alan Bolden,
oh, God.
former head of the D.C. Democratic Party. Also, of course, my frat brother, Dr. Greg Card, chair of Afro-American Studies Department at Howard University, and Eugene Craig, CEO of the Eugene Craig Organization out of Maryland. I'll start with you, Scott. Yeah. Call you what?
E. Sloan Craig.
No, E. Sloan Craig. Yes. So I'll start with you, Alan.
I don't answer to Alan.
Yeah, but if your wife call you, if Erica call you Alan, you gonna answer to it. Yeah, I thought so. Let's start with this. So first of of all, the federal appeals has been filed in the case of Cyntoia Brown, and they were confused. The judges were totally confused about the sentencing in Tennessee, so they asked the state Supreme Court, like, can y'all sort this thing out for us? We can figure out what's going on here. That's why the Supreme Court rendered this decision that she has to serve 51 years because it's confusing. You also have, of course, the Supreme Court ruling when it came to juveniles being granted life sentences. And so all of this is being factored into the case of Cyntoia Brown.
Yeah, so you have two competing statutes. You know, normally in a habeas corpus proceeding, when you're incarcerated, you've been convicted, you bring the body before the court and you ask the court to release the body. That's the individual. Here, once you get done with the state, then you do the same thing at the federal level. And so what normally happens is the statutes are not competing with one another. One says you got to serve 60% of a 60-year sentence of a life sentence, and the other one says that there is no eligibility for parole, and you've got the Supreme Court decision that says it's inhumane treatment and cruel and unusual punishment to convict a juvenile and not let them have any opportunity for parole. So what the Sixth Circuit has said, they sent it back to the highest court in the land and said, you ought to tell me about these two statutes, reconcile them, and tell me whether she's eligible for parole or not. Because if she isn't, I'm going to find the sentencing unconstitutional, which is what her lawyers are trying to do. And if she is eligible for parole after 60% of her life sentence, then it's irrelevant, and so she gets a parole hearing in probably another 50 years. Remember, the Supreme Court decision came down in 2012. She was sentenced over 16 years ago, so it could have a retroactive effect, but that's what they're pushing for.
But it's also retroactive in some other states. So it's not like that's new, Greg. I mean, other states have actually taken that Supreme Court decision and made them retroactive.
Absolutely. I mean, and you know, but unfortunately, the political pressure is probably going to be her best weapon. I mean, this.
Well, they filed for pardon with the governor as well.
Yes.
That's pending, which is more pressure on Haslam, and so we'll have to see. They're taking parallel tracks, which is what they should be doing.
Oh, exactly right. I mean, you know, what are the limits of legal remedy? I mean, and so it can't hurt to go ahead. I mean, it's my hometown, Nashville. I mean, they're calling the governor's office, and I'm thinking whether it be this case, the first case you talked about, the cases we'll talk about subsequently, of this police state idea. In other words, justice is it's distinct from the legal system. We're not talking about pursuing the right thing. We're saying, what does the law say? Well, what is the law? I mean, this woman was enslaved.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and now, of course, years from now, they'll celebrate her resistance, but that doesn't do her any good.
Eugene, of course, the prosecutors are trying to say that this was premeditated. They're saying that she had the intent to rob him. Let's just even take what they're saying. Okay, let's say this is a student. Let's say this is a young woman who's a student, and she's going to school. And then she makes a decision to rob somebody, okay? So you're factoring in how that person's growing up. Okay, this is somebody who was forced into prostitution, 16 years old. Then this guy picks her up from a drive-in burger joint and then takes her home, right? This is not a normal situation. This is not somebody who is thinking in their right mind or whatever the heck. This is somebody who literally is living under duress. And so to act as if this is just somehow, look, it's no big deal. Sure, she was prostituting. Sure, she was being involved in sex trafficking. Sure, she was being held against her will, but she shouldn't have shot and killed a guy.
Yeah, you know, if I can impress my lawyer friend here, I'm not a lawyer, but if I...
Did you play one on TV?
If I play one on TV. if the facts, you know, as Roland presented them, I believe her mens rea, you know, should have been an out for her in this particular case because she was held against her will. There's no way. I mean, as a minor that's being sex trafficked, I mean, it's blatant fact that the reason that these two individuals were together was because he was planning to have sex with her. He was planning to have sex with a minor. That's the first. That should have been the focus of the police there.
Yeah, but that doesn't absolve her from the violent act
but it's
she's
not the
committed.
Let me tell you something. As a conservative, as a libertarian, you know, and Monday, you know, I called out the NRA and all the gun rights groups that you know that push the narrative that hey, women need to carry to protect themselves from this particular situation. They're quiet on this. You know, Senator-elect Marsha Blackburn from Tennessee should be leading the charge on this.
Oh, we know that's not.
You know, we know it's not going to happen, but she should be leading the charge on that.
At the trial level, they argued that, you know, she had alcohol syndrome from when she was born, one, and she had these other stress factors. Presumably the trial court considered it, and it really didn't matter. So the real issue to focus on is this sentencing. If she was a first offender, right? Why is she getting a life sentence as a juvenile and being tried as an adult for a murder? I'm not excusing the murder, but what I am excusing is as a juvenile, after 10, 20 years, you're a different person, and that's what the Supreme Court recognized.
Well, I mean, and you see as well, I mean, talk about parallel tracks in the broader sense of these social campaigns. Human trafficking, slavery, this is the biggest issue in terms of who makes up these people who are enslaved.
Absolutely.
Here in Washington, D.C., in cities around the country, you know, you have folks who have made this not only a marquee issue, this is a no-brainer for people. These young girls in front of schools, you seeing them now, police.
But that's not dispositive as to whether she committed this crime or not. It may be relevant, probative, and material, but the jury considered that and convicted her.
I'm not thinking about this in the legal sense. I'm thinking about it in the social and political sense, particularly as we're now prevailing upon the governor to do the right thing. He has the power of departing. He should just exercise that, particularly on his way out the door.
I think I will say this.
The conservatives like him will denounce him for doing so.
Well, I'll say
I hope not. You're libertarian.
He may be a libertarian, but they will denounce him for exercising that power.
I agree. I am of the belief that I believe Governor Haslam probably is going to pardon on the way out. I don't think he would be.
You think so?
I don't think he would be.
You're just guessing now.
I am guessing.
No. One second. One second. We do have some precedent here. There was a similar case in July where a woman was sentenced. She was supposed to serve 25 years in prison, and the governor did grant clemency.
Yeah, and also I don't think he'll be necessarily teasing it. I mean, he has from a pure political standpoint, he gains nothing by just teasing it on his way out. What he's looking at, every lame duck, executive.
Well, he may run again down the line. He's done it once already. I think that works against us. Against us. He may not do it twice.
I am leaning towards he's probably going to give a pardon.
Well, here's a piece. We'll know about January 19th.
We will.
What his decision is. All right, folks, speaking of January 19th, organizers of the Women's March plan on having, of course, their next march taking place on the 19th or the 20th. And, of course, they're going to make Cyntoia Brown's case a central part of the day's demonstrations. But they've been having significant drama in the Women's March organization dealing with their leadership, Tamika Mallory, Linda Sarsour, Carmen Perez, and also Bob Bland. Of course, they have been under fire from people for a variety of reasons, some saying that accusing them of anti-Semitism, others saying that they're not handling finances correctly. There are others who are saying that they're getting too much of the attention and too much of the credit, and where others should be. And of course, you have some folks who were founders even calling for all of them to step down from leadership. Well, last night, Tamika, Linda, and Carmen dropped this video on Instagram speaking directly to their critics.
Over the last few weeks, we've been spending a lot of time in the midst of planning a march, trying to answer questions and concerns of individuals, of reporters and others about who we really are, about what we've done. And there have been accusations against us, things that have been very troubling, things that do not represent who we truly are. And so instead of us, spending time going back and forth one-on-one with everybody and wasting a lot of time, we want to have a public conversation with three individuals specifically, and that is Vanessa Rubel, who was one of the first people to bring us into the Women's March, Evie Harmon, who we met when we first got here, and Mercy Morganfield from Washington, D.C., who came later. These three women have lied on us. No doubt they have lied on us, and we want to have these conversations in public, not behind closed doors, but in public.
Now, here's a piece.
Shades of culture.
I am more than happy.
We say, Roland.
I'm more than happy to moderate this conversation on to have it in public because it really has been going on for the past year. Things began to ramp up, of course, when Tamika and Carmen sat on stage at Savior's Day, where Minister Louis Farrakhan spoke.
Right.
Many folks have been ripped them, saying that because of Farrakhan's comments on that particular day and his past comments, they should denounce him. Tamika has made it clear that the Fruit of Islam Nation of Islam gave her significant support when she suffered a murder in her family. Linda Sarsour, they've also been attacking her as well, and also Carmen. It's been lots of drama here, and you have folks who are Jewish,
who are criticizing them. You have folks who are white. Then you have other critics who are saying that you have white women who don't like the fact that you have the people who really are running the organization are 3 women of color. I mean, it's loads of drama. I want to bring in our panel here. Now, granted, look, we're talking to all men here about the Women's March. But it is still a story that is quite interesting. There also was a piece that was done, I think, in Tablet. I think that's what it's called. I saw it. And so it's of course, Jay was my producer. Jay's Jewish. It's a Jewish publication. Jay would know. Appreciate that, Jay. Thank you very much. And I saw the story, and so again, Greg, I want to start with you. I mean, the amount. First of all, let's put this in historical perspective.
Yes, sir.
Okay, for people who believe that everything was great, wonderful, and just exciting and even keel, the civil rights movement has no understanding that if you read this story here, I mean, you really see shades of what you've always seen in movements and organizations where certain people ascend to leadership.
You know what, Roland, I'm glad you said that. But those might want to jot down a title. You're always talking about books. Like I said, you got to start that book club, brother, because you constantly talking about reading. Harold Cruz, many people know his book, The Crisis of the Negro Intellectual. But the book that he wrote, entitled Plural But Equal, talks about this tension at the heart of the black Jewish struggle in civil rights. You had Jewish organizations that wanted to advise black folk in places like the NAACP, Major Spingarn, who was informing on the NAACP because he was working with the military at the same time. They want to advise black people on what to do, and at the same time, they were telling Jewish organizations something different. In other words, everybody want to intervene and tell black folks how to struggle, but they don't want black folks to participate in that conversation for themselves or for their organizations. So that thread comes through the 60s. You see it in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. You see a split in SNCC. Many SNCC folks who are still alive, still very sensitive about that. You see it in the Jesse Jackson campaign, the so-called Hymietown remark. You see it with Martin Luther King. You see, so in other words, this is nothing new. Farrakhan, this whole notion of anti-Semitism is utterly absurd. Why do I say that? What is a Semite? The Arabs are Semites. These are Semitic people. If you're talking about Sephardic Jews, Ashkenazim Jews, European Jewry, we don't want to put too fine a point on this, but what we're really talking about is a very important and heavy political lobby, not only in this country, but worldwide. We see what happened with Mark Hill at the UN a couple of weeks ago, trying to bring pressure to bear and telling people you can't struggle on your own terms. In other words, you have to do it the way we want you to do it, and if you don't do it the way we want you to do it, we are going to take over. And much respect to these sisters, particularly Sister Tamika, because there's so much pressure on them.
So even if you take the issue that exists between folks who are criticizing them, who are Jewish, and saying that they should be condemning Farrakhan for anti-Semitic, you also have the attacks on them in terms of organizational. Yes. Again, I look at large organizations. I mean, look, during the Black Freedom Movement, Thurgood Marshall was highly critical of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He said, oh, Martin goes out here, give these speeches, and all he does is leave us with the damn legal bills. Okay? No, that actually happened. Then, of course, you had Adam Clayton Powell, who could not stand Dr. King.
That's right.
And could not stand other civil rights leaders because he felt he was because he was the one who was moving legislation on Capitol Hill, that he was the preeminent civil rights leader. Then, of course, you also had the friction. Of course, SNCC and SNCC people calling the king, here come DeLord.
Yeah.
Calling him DeLord.
Yeah.
Okay, that was a nickname for him. So you had all of these things that were going on that were happening. And so it's people need to understand it's not a shock that you would have people complaining, saying, oh, Tamika, Carmen, Linda, y'all, and Bob, y'all getting all the credit when it's these chappers out here who are doing all the work. If you read, today is the birthday of Ella Baker.
How about
if
that?
you read Barbara Ransby's book on Ella Baker.
Yes, sir.
Ella Baker had tension between her and Dr. King. Because Dr. King believed it was pulpit to pew. She felt it was pew to pulpit.
And she wouldn't let King or any other organization at those young people. That's why they worshiped her with SNCC.
Right. So that was a meeting at the president's house at Shaw University between the president, Y.T. Walker, and Dr. King. She busted into the meeting like, no, I ain't going to let y'all take this over because SCLC gave the initial funding for the conference at Shaw. And so it's not a shock to me, Eugene, to see people complaining about certain individuals getting all the credit and the glory, being named Glamour Women of the Year, being on Essence magazine covers, people saying, well, how dare y'all get all of this? You've always seen that in large organizations.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is this: the criticism of these ladies, it may have now reached new heights, but it's not new. I mean, I remember on our previous show, we had Janae, who was very heavily involved with the Women's March, come in and give us a lot of the backstory about what was going on, and a lot of the white women were being very critical of Tamika and Carmen at that time. Largely. A lot of BS reasons, a lot of reasons that did not hold any weight. But, this is an extension of this. This isn't anything new. This is, something that, has been going on.
Part of leadership.
But you also saw, Scott, it was very interesting. So I was at the Women's March Convention in Detroit. And you had all these battles going on because they asked me to MC a part of the program. So then you had these people who were saying, oh, no, he can't MC because we think he's homophobic. BS. And then the three of them were like, what the hell are y'all talking about? Roland's been a huge supporter of everything that we have done in terms of amplifying our voices and that of women. And so what you have here is you have in the Women's March, you got all these folks, all these competing interests. And then one of the, probably the most well-attended session there was really this discussion when it came to the issue of white women and the movement. And you had all this sort of stuff like that. Like I had some people. Matter of fact, it was such a trip because when I was on stage, again, talking about how white women operate. So I was on stage and I said, if you told me, well, if 3,000 women are gathered, that's a place I want to be. And so, two white women come up to me at the end and say, oh, my God, that was sexist. You were objectified. I was like, what the hell y'all talking about?
You violated the Me Too movement.
And they tried, but here's was a trip. Wow. So these two white women tried to jam me up. But these black women who were waiting to get a photo were like, oh, hell no, y'all going with that bullshit. Right. They were like, no. So it was a trip. So you had these black women who were checking these white women like, no. Who the hell y'all think y'all talking to? Y'all ain't going to diss Roland, who has had our back this whole time. Very much so. And so, and again, and I look at two white women, and I literally like, okay, I ain't got time for y'all. Because again, I'm like, y'all full of it. Yes. Nobody else in the room was sitting there going, oh, my God. I'm sitting here with Rosa Clemente and the rest of them. But it was these two white women who were sort of like, okay, why is this man speaking as if you can't have male supporters of the Women's March? And so it's a whole lot of stuff. It's a lot of stuff that's going on here that goes beyond this criticism of Linda, Tamika, and Carmen over Farrakhan.
Yeah, we need to exhale a little bit. Everybody just needs to exhale, maybe hire a mediator. I mean, the reality is this. You've got multiplicity of women and interests and issues in the Women's March, and with that is a not a cesspool, but a pool of varied interests that are not consistent with one another. And managing those inconsistencies and putting all those issues into one pot to make changes for women across the board, I just think inherent in the mixture is going to be a challenge.
And Greg, look, we also have to deal, and again, this is where I think for a lot of people, and this is why that session was so important in Detroit, there are a lot of white women who have no clue about history. Yep. When you have some of the foremost women leaders of the suffrage movement, who are racist.
Come on,
who are flat out racist.
Come on.
Who made it clear.
Who don't realize they are.
No. They were overt racists.
Go look at the fight over the 15th Amendment. They said, do not give the vote to Sambo before you give it to your wives and daughters. That's Susan B. Anthony. That's Elizabeth Cady Stanton. That's why Ida Bell Wells was like, I don't roll with y'all like that. Very seriously.
You had battles between Frederick Douglass and Susan B. Anthony. That's right. Over the 15th Amendment.
That's right.
And so you had that going on. Then you also had with National Organization for Women. They were like, no, that's the white women's organization.
Right.
Because we need to understand that women were only included in the 1964 Civil Rights Act because the racist Judge Smith out of Virginia thought by putting women into the bill,
That's right.
that actually
Poison
was
pill.
going to kill
That's
the
right.
bill.
That's right.
When in fact it actually helped its passage. And so the reason, so then if you go look at Title IX, okay, which was passed in '72, Title IX had nothing to do with sports.
That's right.
Title IX was about opening the professional schools to women.
That's right.
White women benefited, who became doctors, lawyers, engineers, scientists, professors,
right.
and they benefited from the 1964 Civil Rights Act,
That's right.
which black people made possible.
Roland,
So you got this. So this whole.
right.
So this tension
That's right.
with these women of color
Yes.
and white women
Yes.
has deep historical roots, Greg.
Roland, you know, what you experienced in Detroit, very important. And it's important that you talk about people like Rosa Clemente. I mean, we're talking about, people talk about intersectionality. We think about Audre Lorde, who brought this up in the 70s and 80s. You know, we are many things at once. When people talk about Sojourner Truth, the reason she has to say, am I not a woman too? Is because white women are trying to leapfrog over this race struggle to deal with this gender struggle. So this whole ain't I a woman speech comes out of that. And in terms, talk about the National Organization of Women, who is the patron saint in many ways of Ruth Bader Ginsburg? Pauli Murray. She talks about the great Pauli Murray, one of the greatest intellectuals of the 20th century, a lawyer, in fact, ordained as a saint in her Episcopalian tradition. This black woman is the one who forces the issue of gender into that conversation. So the 64 Civil Rights Act, Title IX, you have a black woman sitting there, an intellectual, helped write the Ghanaian Constitution, force it, Howard Law School grad, injects this into the bloodstream. So when you see these sisters protect you, Roland, on this issue, because nobody, look, it's 4 men here today, but tomorrow it's going to be some women, but yesterday it was some women. It's always who's raising this gender issue and why? Race is at the center of this, and it's out of Wells is telling you.
And I just think everyone understand. That's when you, with this struggle that is going on. Then, of course, because it's not only that, it's a black woman who's in D.C., who they name checked, who was highly critical of them, saying, wait a minute, it's the local chapters. But again, let me provide for people so you understand the tension. This is no different than when you had NAACP chapters who felt national leadership was getting too much credit, and then the chapters were doing all the work. You need to understand, again, history. That's right. Your organizations have always had that. If you really want to understand it, go read the book, I Never Had It Made. Come on, brother. Some of the most vicious takedown of Roy Wilkins came from Jackie Robinson. That's right. Who ripped Roy Wilkins because he said how he was egotistical. Keep in mind.
And against Medgar Evers.
Yeah, and keep in mind, 1959. Come on, brother. Roy Wilkins called Dr. King a radical because he felt Dr. King was getting too much attention. And so, folks, don't be confused by what's happening in the Women's March right now with Tamika, with Linda, with Carmen, with Bob Bland.
Watch this, Roland.
I mean, we've always seen this.
Watch this. Colorism. Watch this. This is a very sensitive topic because, like you say, once you read Mary McLeod Bethune and Mary Church Terrell. These are two titans, but if you look very closely, look at the correspondence of what's going on, there were tensions between those two. Okay, but we got to say what Roland's saying is very true.
I understand. It's true. And you all both have given us all and everybody watching the show a history lesson.
Right. Because Alan, you had no clue about the history lesson. But go ahead. I'm messing with you.
I know.
But go ahead. Hold on.
It's very informative, even for me. I love it. But the reality is this. What matters most isn't the resolution. I pose a question to you.
Yes,
how do they resolve this issue
here's what it is.
with that deep historical roots?
No, the reason you have to go through the historical timeline is to get people to understand that this is the reality of organizations maturing.
So it's unresolvable.
No. That's not what I just said. What I said is this is the reality of when you have organizations that are being formed and that are being created, where you go through this. You go through these tectonic battles. People forget W.E.B. Du Bois has significant battles with the NAACP when he led the Crisis magazine over what he was writing and reporting over what they wanted. So you always have that. I think what Tamika is saying in that video is, okay, versus y'all talking over here, and versus y'all talking over here, and versus a couple telling the tablet, versus this sister in D.C. She's like, no. Have a public conversation. Because, see, when you put folks in a public conversation, then now you're accountable, and now you can't hide behind quotes. You can't hide, and now you are facing your accusers.
Well, you know what's
and now your
different.
accusers can also be checked on what they have to say.
But, Ron, you know what's different? What's different now is, of course, we live in a different age because of technology. When SNCC went through the battle that led to John Lewis losing his chairmanship and Stokely Carmichael becoming the chair, they met in private. That's a private argument. In fact, talk about self-criticism.
And when you meet in private, then there are different interpretations of what happened in the private meeting.
That's very true.
What they're saying here is let's be publicly where ain't nobody.
But it's not the organization is forming out of a movement, as you said.
Right.
The birthing pains then become very public when you're living in an age of social media. Whereas the SNCC kids used to criticize Stokely Carmichael. You hear Joyce and Dory Ladner and them, they referred to him as Stokely Star Michael. Why? Because you don't meet the press. But now, when you have Twitter and Facebook and Periscope, instant leaders.
There you go. And I'll make this last.
It's so petty.
No, it's not. Actually, it's not. Because these are the growing pains. And I'll make this last point that people need to understand. Because what happens is, and I read that story, and there were people who were saying, but this movement, Eugene had no leaders. Folks, here's the reality, okay? The same thing happened when you had the May Day marches with Latinos all across the country. Do you know why that actually failed? Because they had no leaders. Let me be clear. I know it sounds cute and it sounds wonderful when people say, oh no, we're not going to have any leaders. Here's the reality. You can't show me a successful movement that doesn't have leadership and hierarchy. The problem is, and this is where media comes in, there are people who are intoxicated by this medium, okay? I didn't want to make a commentary, but I'm going to go ahead and do this.
Oh, man.
This is what I need y'all to understand.
Come on, brother.
This medium is intoxicating. This medium is seductive. What did Elijah Muhammad warn Malcolm X about?
That's right.
He said, beware of the flash bulbs
right.
and the TV cameras.
That's right.
It is the same thing. It happens in the reverse, because then somebody who's not on stage, then somebody who's not on magazine covers, then somebody who is not being lavished with attention, all of a sudden, they then become upset by it. I'll use my recent interview that I did with Reverend Dr. James Lawson. This is what he said. He said, I was meant to be behind scenes. He said, the last image I have of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was him being on the front row and me being in my place on the back row. I've said this about leadership for years. Not everybody can be a head coach. Head coaches need great assistant coaches, need a great defensive coordinator, an offensive coordinator, a wide receivers coach, a defensive line coach. There are multiple folks. There's a trainer. There's somebody who does nutrition, somebody who does the weight room. But everybody can't be the head coach. The problem in organizations is that there are people who are jealous of leadership. I am not absolving anybody in the Women's March who's in leadership of any responsibility. But what I'm saying is you have to understand how seductive media is. And there are others who don't like it when somebody else gets the credit and say, why are you getting more credit than someone else? Because it is a natural form of leadership. The person who is in a leadership position is who people go to for quotes. It's the person who's on television, the person who's on radio, the person who is in newspaper. And so maybe to your point, Scott, how do you resolve this? What needs to happen is the people who are critical of them for the attention they're getting, they need to check their motives.
Exactly.
Because what you should be asking yourself is, why did you get involved in the Women's March? Was it about being on a magazine cover? Was it about being in newspapers and on television shows? Or was it actually about the work? If you're a Reverend Dr. James Lawson type person, you know what you're concerned about? The work. He is one of our greatest organizers in history. Many of you have never even heard of him. You have never even heard of him speak. Today, Ella Baker was born in 1903 on this day.
Come on, brother.
She is arguably Not matter of fact, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund put a tweet out saying she was one of the most important women leaders. And I said no. I said she was arguably the most important civil rights leader because it was Ella Baker who went from progressive organizations in the 1930s and 40s.
That's right.
To leadership in the NAACP, working on the national office and going out in the field, to then going to the SCLC and then going into SNCC. She served as the continuum in those organizations. She literally constructed SCLC, not Dr. King, not Wyatt T. Walker. She literally built SCLC. She was the one who actually helped form and shape SNCC. The point there is, most of y'all don't even know who Ella Baker is.
Or SNCC.
Because she wasn't in the newspapers on television. She wasn't Dr. King. She wasn't Ralph Abernathy. She wasn't Roy Wilkins. She wasn't Whitney Young. She wasn't James Farmer. She wasn't John Lewis. She wasn't in that core of leadership. And so what should be happening here is, in the Women's March, as in any organization, ask yourself the question, why am I here? Is it about the work or is it about attention? And once you deal with that, you can then deal with the rest of the stuff. But I dare say, after I read that entire tablet article, critical of them on all kind of reasons about anti-Semitism and Farrakhan and organization and money, you know what really stood out? People who didn't like the fact that they were getting the attention more than anything else. Check your motive before you check anything else. All right, folks, here's a word from one of our partners. I want you to write this website down, marijuanastock.org, marijuanastock.org. Now, I'm going to tell you why. As we transition into the holiday season, this is the time when we start thinking about giving and sharing. Sometimes the best gift that you can give someone is an opportunity that could potentially change their lives. That's why Transatlantic Real Estate, they've created this incredible investment opportunity for the everyday investor, and it involves legal marijuana and crowdfunding. Now, we all know that legal marijuana has created one of the fastest growing industries in the country, multi-billion-dollar industry. We also know that crowdfunding has made it easier to be an early investor of an opportunity. But it gets even better. Transatlantic Real Estate, folks, here's what they've done with their business model. They buy land that supports marijuana grow operations and lease it to licensed high-paying tenants, which means that you are the landlord of a licensed marijuana farm in a high-growth market. Now, for a limited time, you can invest as little as $300 up to $10,000 before the company goes public. Now, here's some more good news. They've extended their offer, okay, which means you still have time to be involved if you take action now. But here's the deal, though. You must complete and confirm your application to participate. You have to complete the process. Now, a lot of you are going to spend all your money buying gifts of something you're not going to be able to use in a year, but this is an investment that actually could pay off over a number of years, even decades. You could also make this an investment for someone special. Now, all you got to do is go to marijuanastock.org. That's marijuanastock.org to get in the game. Let's talk about what's happening in Los Angeles, folks. Jonathan Hart, 21 years old, shopping in a Walgreens in Hollywood on December 2nd. 8:10 p.m., shot dead by a security guard. Now, the original claim was that he was shoplifting, but he wasn't. His attorney, Carl Douglas, says he was targeted because he was black, gay, and homeless. Now, Walgreens has apologized and fired the security company. But Jonathan is still dead. Joining us right now is attorney Carl Douglas. Carl, welcome to Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Brother, thank you for having me on your show, man. Looking forward to it.
When you look at this story here, again, so they initially said he was shoplifting. Now they're saying he wasn't. What the hell? Why then was he shot?
There was a dispute, Roland, between he and the security guard. The guard pushed him. He pushed the guard. There may have been a punch thrown. He then turned and started walking toward the door. The cop pulls out his gun, raises it, says freeze. As John keeps walking, the cop fires one shot, shoots him in the back of the neck. He falls and dies right there.
And so they fired the security company, but he's dead. I mean, that's no. So what are you seeking on behalf of this family? First of all, are the DA's office, are they going to investigate? Are they looking to charge someone?
The DA's office right now is currently investigating the case. It has been presented to them, and they are determining probably over the next 4 or 5 days or so what they're going to do. But as important, Roland, and this is what I want your listeners to understand, I am calling for a boycott of Walgreens. There are 54 Walgreens stores in L.A. County, 622 in California. 9,500 across the country. And in Los Angeles, of those 54 stores, only 4 of them had armed security guards. Those stores were in the black, the brown, the homeless, and the LGBT communities. That is wrong, my brother. And until Walmart is made financially responsible, they're going to keep having armed guards in these stores. Well, that's just not dangerous for Jonathan Hart. That's dangerous for me or for you. And that has to stop.
Got to ask you this question. Obviously, I've heard from other African Americans, Jasmine Headley, she's been tweeting this story. Where are white gay folks? Are they joining you in this? Are they also upset? Because, again, I've read numerous stories where they're saying this man was shot because he was black and gay, not just black.
He was black and gay and homeless. We have, Roland, over 55,000 homeless people in California, in Los Angeles, second only to New York City. There are over 7,000 homeless youth between the ages of 14 and 25. There's a natural gyration of that population to the Hollywood area in Southern California. So this is a problem not just for the Jonathan Harts of the world. You got to understand, man, if this guy had missed that one shot, anyone walking into that store could have been a victim. If you place armed guards into a pharmacy, there has to be a foreseen expectation that someone is going to fire a shot and then perhaps someone will be injured. Today it's Jonathan Hart. Tomorrow it might be someone that you or I love.
And Walgreens has apologized. What else have you heard from them?
Well, they've apologized, but you got to understand, Walgreens is the largest retail pharmacy company in the world. They generated $118